Can Biden just, pull the 1031 exchange out, or he needs the House and the Senate as well? Hey guys and gals, it's Logan Freeman with LiveFree Investment Podcast. I'm here with Dave Foster today. I interview investors, business owners, and subject matter experts that share investment and business advice that help us to live free. Dave, why don't you tell everybody on the show today a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Hey, thanks, Logan. It's great to be here with you today. First and most important, because I know where you're coming from, everybody needs to understand that I grew up in a town just a little bit west from you.
Yep.
And in case anybody wants to deduce where that is, there's only two colors in the town, purple and white.
I know where that's at.
And for the first one of your viewers that emails me and lets me know where that is, I got a free cup of coffee for him.
There we go. All right. You heard it here first. Look at that. Look at that.
But
special.
For the last 20 years, what I've been doing both for myself and for real estate investors is acting as a qualified intermediary for what is a thing called the Section 1031 tax deferred exchange.
Right.
And that has been basically an ability that I've used to follow an IRS approved process, sell investment real estate, buy investment real estate, and indefinitely defer the tax on the profits or depreciation recapture.
Sure.
So as you can imagine, that's been a pretty powerful part of the statute, and it's been pretty powerful for me personally.
Sure.
As we go. Unfortunately, it's in the news now, and that's partly why you and I are talking.
That's right. That's right. Well, for all of my brokerage clients, if you ever have questions around 1031 exchanges, Dave is who I typically recommend for them to chat with. So Dave, thank you for always being a great resource for all of those folks and breaking down all of these complex situations, because while there is rules and regulations, there seems to be a lot of gray area sometimes, and you help kind of clear that up. So I really appreciate that. You have to reach out to Dave before you accept your monies from selling your property, okay? Do not close your transaction without calling Dave. You need to be making sure that those gains are going to qualified intermediary. So, Dave, we're going to talk a little bit about the Section 1031 today, but also we're going to talk about some things that you might feel like are at risk just a little bit more than the 1031. But I'm going to start us off here by reading a headline. Okay, so Biden's tax plan would pull the rug out from under the real estate industry. Right, this is what we've been seeing. Biden is going to repeal the 1031 exchange. He said this before he was president-elect, right? So what I want to hear from you is this the first time you've heard this? Is there real value in actually getting nervous about it? What investors should do, and how that process would go? Can Biden just, pull the 1031 exchange out, or he needs the House and the Senate as well? So let's just start it off and see where it goes, Dave.
Yeah, that's there's a lot in that question. First of all, it's important to understand that 1031 has been part of the tax code since 1920.
That's right.
So it's not that it's anything new. It's not the Trump plan that needs the anti-Trump to fix it. It's been around for a long, long time. It's kind of funny because really, depending on who you talk to or who you see in the street, President-elect Biden, if that's what we're calling him now, is either a horned devil or he's the savior of all.
That's right.
And it, maybe the truth, like with everything else, falls somewhere in between.
Mm-hmm.
Because interestingly enough, most people have forgotten that the only change to the 1031 part of the tax code in the last 100 years was a restriction by, guess who?
Donald Trump.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So for 86 years, 96 years, we had this thing in the tax code that was clicking away,
letting
people do this. Now, what President Trump did was he eliminated the part of the statute that allowed you to tax defer exchange personal property.
That's right.
So things like airplanes, heavy equipment, and that kind of stuff were no longer part of the code. But I mean, holy cow, for everybody who's terrified of what a Democratic president is going to do, it was a Republican.
Right. Yeah.
No less,
absolutely
who
was.
messed up the first time. But yeah, so I think with that being said, you kind of have to look at each individual president as a standalone and say, first of all, what's the landscape? What are they going to be able to do? Every president I can think of back to Clinton has talked about it, including both Bush's, including Biden's mentor, Barack Obama. They've all talked about wanting to eliminate the 1031. Ultimately, they all decided not to.
Right.
And we can get into that in a little bit too, if you want to, because I think you've got some pretty compelling stats that have been put out there. But
absolutely, yeah.
For whatever reason, they have decided not to. So I always go into this, and this will set you up by saying that what a president wants is not necessarily what a president gets.
Sure.
And what a president thinks they want when they're campaigning is not always what they really realize they want once they're elected.
That's right. That's right. And, this alone just creates a buzz and a talking point. I wouldn't necessarily say it's a positive one, because there's a lot of Democrats that utilize Section 1031. If you look at the House of Representatives and Senate, and I mean, people really do utilize this. I mean, they're typically doing pretty well if they're in those roles. I mean, I'm just saying typically. There might be, what I'll call, politicians that have been politicians from day one. But if they are that way, then they probably come from some money, and they're utilizing real estate to help build their wealth typically. And they're utilizing this. So it's not only, a talking point that Biden used. I mean, most of the people in the House and in the Senate are utilizing, a lot of these are utilizing the Section 1031. So that's something to note as well. So Ernst & Young did a study in 2015. I find this really, really interesting. The analysis examined the macroeconomic impact of the recent proposals back in 2015 to repeal the Section 1031 like-kind exchanges, the rules. And so the findings were very, very interesting. So the impact on GDP, investment, and labor. Okay, let's just start with GDP. And this was 5 years ago. So obviously that has changed. And let's also look at and think about the psychological impacts that people might have if they're in the real estate world. I mean, there's companies, qualified intermediaries, but there's also companies like Inland, who their whole business is based on 1031 exchanges. So there's going to be, that would not fare well, I don't think, for a lot of people, and this just feeling about the economy in general. But GDP was estimated, this is 5 years ago, to fall by $8.1 billion each year. I mean, that's a humongous amount of money. I mean, that's not only service providers, that's transaction volume, that's loans, that is property managers, that's qualified intermediaries. But that's a big, big, big number. So investment was estimated to fall by $7 billion. And then labor income was estimated to fall by $1.4 billion in the long run. So the net impact was very, very, big if that was to be the case. So you can't think about this as just rich people using this to, defer their capital gains. They're going to pay the piper at some point, unless they take it to the grave, right? But also, they're creating, this is creating jobs for families, for workers. This is creating buzz. This is creating dollars. Transactions create dollars. And people always look to the housing market and into the investment market in real estate to kind of see how people are feeling. So I think there's a larger impact that Joe Biden would really have to, sit down and look at and say, how do the people of America, the American people, feel about this. And there's other ways to get more tax into deals and into the economy. I don't think this is the best way to do that. And I think that he used it as a talking point and to kind of create some buzz. But the long-term impacts of eliminating this would be huge.
Yeah, never underestimate the power of Congress when
That's
they're in
right.
session. I don't think they ever met a tax they didn't like.
That's
And
right.
they will be creative about getting their cut. But it's interesting that, you even said the words rich people. And that's kind of how this argument has framed itself.
Yep.
As it's the rich versus the not rich.
Mm-hmm.
We get rid of the 1031. We eliminate a loophole for these rich fat cats. But interestingly enough, here's some more statistics for you. Now, we do have to extrapolate a little bit because the last data from the IRS on 1031 exchanges was 2013.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, they got busy or something. I don't know.
Sure.
And since that time, we've basically been able to extrapolate from trends that right now there is something over 500,000 exchanges happening every year.
Yeah.
And of those more than 500,000 exchanges, the average sales price of those is less than $400,000 from what we can extrapolate.
Yep.
That is not the fat cats. That is you and me and average America.
That's right.
Trying to take advantage of a break. That if you simply eliminate it, you end up with you end up with the law of unintended consequences.
That's right. Yeah.
You take it away from the very people that you want to benefit. And there's some further ripples to this that I think haven't been counted yet, but I'll bet they are sooner or later. And that is one of the more concerning elements for me that is proposed is the elimination of the step up in basis. So if you eliminate the 1031 exchange, people are going to hold on to properties longer.
Absolutely.
Now, if I own a duplex and I'm wanting to buy bigger and bigger properties, I'm going to have to pay more for those because nobody's going to want to sell.
That's right.
But unfortunately, the people that are selling to me aren't going to be making more money. They're simply going to be paying more in tax.
That's right.
So they're going to be less likely to want to sell to me. And if that's the case, and then if you couple that with an elimination of the step up in basis, where they can give it to their heirs and the tax disappears, we're going to start to see a massive corporate restructuring where property sales are going to plummet because all we're going to do is create different entity structures so that I can bring my heirs in so that I don't have to sell. And it is in the sale of real estate that you get appreciation.
That's right.
There has to be movement and velocity. And unfortunately, I think that's one of the things that's probably going to happen.
That is an incredible point. I really appreciate you making that. And when properties sell, counties reassess the properties and up the taxes. So
exactly correct.
Hello, if you sell your property that you've owned for 20 years, it was $1 million 20 years ago. Now you're selling it for $5 million. Guess what? You just created a ton more in tax for the government. So there's like you said, there's ripple effects to be thinking about. And there's benefits of transacting real estate, appreciation being one of them. And where we're at currently in the market, obviously folks are, I preach this a lot, Dave, but the equities markets are extremely frothy. I cannot believe how high things are and the valuations on some of these companies. I saw a slide the other day that had Apple. It had their valuation, and then it had companies like airlines and huge grocery companies like Kroger and these other companies. There's like 25 other companies that were in this other slide, and they said Apple is worth more than all these 25 companies combined. It was crazy, man. That's all to say is that people are going to start wanting to transact real estate after I think the election kind of settled down. Coronavirus, we have an end to that. I'm already seeing it. Maybe you are. People are feeling more comfortable with buying and selling real estate right now. And frankly, I've had a few folks reach out to me that said, hey, I wasn't going to sell my property, but with this new threat with Biden taking the 1031 exchange, I'm going to. And I'm like, hey, I'll give you my honest opinion about it. It's going to take some time no matter what. Nothing happens overnight. But I'm also not going to tell you not to sell your property and buy something new either.
Well, I think that's all about smart positioning.
Yeah.
And just being strategic. We can't operate on the rules of tomorrow because we don't know what those are.
That's right.
We can only invest based on what we know to be true today.
Yep.
And if we know that we can defer tax and move into better assets, now's the time to do that.
That's right.
And especially if we think that maybe we might have to end up holding our assets longer.
Yeah.
Then I'm certainly at the camp of make hay while the sun shines.
That's right.
And start to position yourself right now. There's another really interesting, as I've had the chance to look at this, Logan, unintended ripple that I think is going to become counterproductive. One of Biden's other parts of his plan is the $15,000 first-time homebuyer tax credit. Now, who is going to make up the first-time homebuyers? They're renters right now.
Yeah.
So we're going to incentivize them to buy houses. What houses are going to be available?
Sure.
Well, they're houses that landlords own now. But if you eliminate the 1031 exchange, and by the way, far and away the majority of all 1031 exchanges are single family and small multifamily rentals.
That's right.
So if you eliminate the 1031 exchange, again, for those people, but at the same time, you're trying to incentivize their renters to buy that very property, they're going to have trouble finding inventory.
It's already hard
to do it, or they're going to be paying. Exactly. Yeah, everything is crazy. I tell you, my favorite 1031 of all time happened in 2003 in Cape Coral, Florida. There was an elderly lady that called me up and said, she didn't know what it was. She goes, when I told her, she goes, I want to do that. I said, great. What are you selling? Well, I'm selling this lot that I've had for a long time. I paid $1,000 for it. How much are you selling it for? $11,000. I said, you realize by the time you pay the 1031 exchange fee, you're going to save about $750 in taxes.
Yep.
And I could just see her on the phone, put her answer and just go, yeah, but that's my $750.
That's right. It is.
And I think that, you got to applaud that.
Yeah, you do.
And when you've got something that's been designed to increase velocity, to provide for people to be able to invest, you hate to see it go away.
Yeah.
But like Mark Twain said, it's just like the weather, right? We can talk about it all we want. Doing something about it's a different story.
That's exactly right. Well, Dave, I got to jump. I know you got to go. Thank you so much for breaking this down. If folks want to reach out to you, where can they find you? And what's the best medium to get a hold of you to talk more about 1031 exchanges?
As long as I have a job, you can catch me at the 1031investor.com. But believe you me, no matter who's in the office, real estate investors are going to find ways to make money.
That's right. Dave, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate your knowledge, but also the way that you interact and your giving nature. Thanks for being on the show today. All right, man, I got to jump. That was awesome. I'll get that edited up next week and post that out. So I'll make sure you get it so you can post it out and do with it.
Yeah, let us know and we'll get it out there. It'll be the first of many conversations, I'm sure, just like this, I would imagine.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Dave. Stay in touch.
Take care, bro.